Well, what's going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream here for Tuesday's seven-game main slate. James, you're the guy on the playbook today. You did the deep dive. You did all the work. How you feeling about everything?
Feeling pretty good. Definitely a lot of interesting narratives tonight. Like, what is Golden State and San Antonio going to do on a second leg of a back-to-back? We just
Okay.
saw this game. Um, I mean, what is Houston going to look like tonight? We only saw DeMarcus Cousins play 25 minutes last night, so that's, positive, but the center position is loaded.
All
Do we
right.
go back to the well with Cousins? What do we do there? Um, is Sacramento this good? Winning four straight, now hosting Philly, and what to do at the top. I think there's a couple of truly elite options at the top, and who's the top dog at the end of the night. So we definitely have some interesting dynamics going tonight, and then some injury news to still awaiting, like Jaylen Brown
Right.
questionable and so on and so forth. So feeling good about it though. Ultimately, 7 games, more games than we've generally gotten on Tuesday. It's been like three, four,
Yeah.
five.
Usually
But
Tuesday and Thursday have been like a lighter low, but they kind of
yep,
evened it off a bit more this week. Some interesting game totals you mentioned here: Golden State, San Antonio, 231. Brooklyn, Detroit, 229. Detroit 6.5 point dogs in that one. Again, it feels like Detroit, for whatever reasons, playing teams tougher. I'm not
right.
really sure why, but this one, we know the Nets don't play much defense, so some good looks there. Late night hammer, Philly, Sacramento, 231. We're gonna love that one. New York, Miami is just 209. There's some interesting players in this game. Do you full fade a 209 total on a seven-game slate?
Not full fade, but like limited. I think limited exposure. I mean, we just saw the game. It was okay.
Mm,
We saw kind of this like 212 was the final total. So I think it's fair. I think you play pieces, but I don't think it's a full fade. I don't think you can necessarily full fade on 7 games, but I think if there was one game we don't want exposure to, John, it would probably be this one.
yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right, let's take a look at the point guard position here. Up at the top, we got Dame Lillard. Great spot here for him going up against Orlando. Steph Curry running it back against San Antonio, and a returning Kyrie Irving going up against the Pistons. Talk to me. Where are you ranking them? How are you playing them?
I think Lillard's my favorite. Orlando's struggling mightily against point guards, 26 in DVP. So I'm going to lean Lillard. I also don't understand his price tag on FanDuel. I don't know why he's under 10K right now, especially with Portland, Sands, McCollum, and Nurkic. Like,
Right.
it just doesn't really make sense to me. So I think Lillard is the hard favorite for me. Curry, look, it's a back to back, and I generally don't play shooters on second legs, but like this is a different breed. Like this guy is in tip top form right now, and it's a bad Spurs defense, and he exposed them last night. He's been really exposing everyone lately. Three of his last four, he's gone for 32 actual at least and 54 fantasy points. So Curry definitely in tournaments, and Kyrie is the wild card, right? There's no Durant, and I feel like you can play both Irving and Harden in a lineup together. You could probably just full stack this game if you do believe Detroit is going to stay close because they have some really interesting price points on their side.
Right.
So I like Kyrie. I don't know if I won't say I don't like him as much as the other two because the other two are super elite, and I think Kyrie falls into that category. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I would probably limit my exposure to Kyrie to tournaments because I like Lillard more in cash games tonight against Orlando, but I probably rank them how I have them in the playbook: Lillard, Curry, Irving.
All right. Mid tier for me, looking and seeing Lonzo still at $6,300 over on DraftKings just makes me want to jump all over that here against Houston. I know there are other mid tier plays that we're liking today, but we've seen really tremendous upside out of Lonzo this season, even with all the news of him possibly being traded. He's still chugging along. We're getting him still playing 30 plus minutes, which is great. How are you feeling here? Good spot against Houston. John Wall is back for them tonight. No Oladipo. So, for me, I'm a big fan of where we're getting Lonzo here.
Yeah, both point guards in this game, I think, are in elite spots. And the shooting has come around for Lonzo, too. I mean, 53% or better, and he's hit 4+ threes in 3 straight games. And we've seen the fantasy production skyrocket because of it. We've never really doubted everything else from Lonzo Ball. We know he is a great passer. We know he's a very good rebounder for a guard. We've just been kind of the shooting has kind of been lagging behind, and we're getting that production. And we know John Wall focuses more on his offense, John, than he does
Right.
defense. So yeah, I love Lonzo, and I love that he's not going to be highly owned. And it's a nice little pace up spot. But I do like John Wall on the flip side. Um, New Orleans ranks 21st against point guards. Wall has a 35% usage without Oladipo, Wood, and James Harden. But it does we do have to mention Harden because there's no Harden anymore. And when he's not on the floor, Wall's usage rates up to 35%. Now it's interesting to see his ownership uh, so widely spread on DraftKings so high and on FanDuel so low. Maybe you take a stab at Wall over on FanDuel where it's only 7,700, and I feel like he can. There is 50-point fantasy upside here.
Yeah, for sure. Now you mentioned James Harden at shooting guard. On a slate like this, few have his slate breaking upside. He can go for 80 fantasy points, 7-game slate. He can win it for you here. We saw the big names play last night for the most part. But there are also some really good shooting guards on this slate. So
Yeah.
if you're playing on FanDuel, obviously you can play Harden plus, but Donovan Mitchell playing point Donnie right now and no Mike Conley has 60 fantasy point upside. We've seen it, and you go down, Eric Gordon is returning, and we've seen him go score 25 actual and give you points and rebounds and assists lately, too, filling out the stat sheet. We're big fans of Halliburton. We love Jordan Clark. Where are we going here at shooting guard time? Is it a spend up at shooting guard, or are you playing more the mid-tier guys?
I mean, it's definitely hard to ignore James Harden versus the Detroit Pistons in a 230 total, without Kevin Durant. And the reason I wasn't so bullish on Kyrie is because we've obviously have a larger sample of James Harden doing everything pretty much on a nightly basis for however many years he's been in the NBA, kind of as the lead dog. So I love Harden as a spend up, and like you mentioned on FanDuel, you could spend up on Harden and one of those point guards we mentioned, or Harden and Embiid, and still be comfortable. But you're right, Donovan Mitchell. We've been saying it for years. Point Donnie is a fantasy gold mine, and we get $3,000 of savings on FanDuel going to Donovan Mitchell. And Eric Gordon is in a great spot. He has a big usage rate, and he used to play for the Pelicans. I don't know if the revenge narrative is still there, but I mean, once upon a time, he was injured all the time in New Orleans. Maybe letting go of some demons tonight, just chucking the ball 25 times. You didn't. Halliburton, we've attacked Philly at the wings this year. Halliburton playing a lot off the ball when he's playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. You got to love that. And then Jordan Clarkson, we know there's 25 actual point upside there. So this mid-tier is very interesting. I even think the value tier is interesting. And I thought I was going to be a little sneakier with Dwayne Bacon, and the ownership percentages are not giving me that. But he did play 30 minutes. I checked Popcorn Machine, and it was 30 minutes of non-garbage run against the Bulls. So he's in line for 30, probably just by default because they don't have anyone with Evan Fournier officially ruled out as well. So I'm going to go the Dwayne Bacon route tonight in cash and in tournaments. I know I haven't listed as GPP, but I think seeing the ownership there on Dwayne Bacon makes me feel better about him in cash as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one there. Small forward here, Jimmy Butler, that's basically who I was alluding to. 209 game total, but since he's come back, he's been fantastic. Is he sort of an exception? We're looking at ownership again. We are expecting him to be kind of highly owned tonight on this slate, but 209 is pretty dreadful there.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, there's exceptions, and I think it's the elite that we make exceptions for in bad matchups, right? Because you can win tournaments with elite players in bad matchups if they're just elite, which is, the case for anybody that he could put up 60 fantasy points and it could still be a 205 result, right? And you're like, well, Jimmy Butler was the only piece from the game that smashed. So I definitely think there's some merit there. I find myself in my roster construction today mostly pivoting to Jeremy Grant, and I don't think that's like a secret. That's not like going to be this like GPP winning like surprise to everyone, especially when you see Jeremy Grant is $7,000 on DraftKings, which I mean, I don't know how many times you, myself, Sean, Justin Fensterman have said like, why isn't he over 8K yet? And the
Right.
price is going south after 32 actual and 53 fantasy points against maybe the best defense in basketball against the Lakers. Yes, double overtime, great. Still was smashing before overtime. So I love Butler, but the game environment for Jeremy Grant is very hard to ignore, especially considering this spread that opened at 9 is down to 6.5, and the
Mhm.
total is still at 230. Like something is gravitating me towards the Pistons tonight. And again, I'm not going to be alone with that thought, and maybe that's a reason why you might want to pivot to Butler on DraftKings, spend the extra money, get lower ownership for the triple double upside. But Jeremy Grant at the top here is just too good to pass up on it, especially in DraftKings.
Yeah. Right before we jumped on, we got news Draymond Green is questionable for tonight with a knee. You have Kelly Oubre in the playbook. You don't have Toscano Anderson in the playbook. Does he become more viable to you if Draymond sits?
I mean, yeah, and we've seen in the past few games, Draymond being there doesn't necessarily matter for Toscano Anderson. Maybe from the shot taking perspective, not that Draymond, sucks up a lot of usage in terms of shot attempts, but 6-1 the last two games is nothing to write home about. But you mentioned before we hopped on, he's gotten double figures in rebounds in 2 straight. He has 8 or more in 3 straight. So he's obviously very effective on the glass. I do have interest because San Antonio is so small and they're just not a great front court. I don't think Jakob Poeltl really scares me on the glass. Like, oh man, he's a vacuum. He's going to suck up 20 rebounds. No, like Toscano Anderson definitely has double-digit rebounding upside again. He probably has a double-double in the bag tonight if
Yeah,
Draymond sits.
I could see that. I mean, they're going to have to, if he is out, we're assuming that Eric Paschal, then I guess, starts at center or
Well, even if he does, like
right, like
with the knee, how much does Paschal play? I know he
right.
played last night, but now he's on a back-to-back. He had a
If
bum
anything, that
knee.
makes me like either Pirtle a lot more, or we think that San Antonio plays super small.
I am just extremely terrified playing Spurs on a back to back. Like I want to go back to when it was, but we all played Spurs on a back to back, and they all played like 22 minutes,
Yeah.
25 minutes, 27 minutes. It's like why I get it, but like we're in the beginning of the year. We're not even like in it was January 29th and 30th. DeMar DeRozan, who is clearly the best player who we've never really worried about on back-to-backs, played 25 minutes on the second leg of a back-to-back. If DeMar DeRozan isn't playing minutes on a back-to-back, that concerns me for everyone. So I'm more interested in the Warriors than I would be personally on the Spurs.
Okay. Where are you looking at the top of power forward here today? Like, what's your must play?
I mean, it was Draymond. It was Draymond.
Right.
Like the Jimmy Butler, the whole talk about Jimmy Butler. I think you can plug Julius Randle into that equation too, right? He's very safe.
Yeah.
If you want to play him, same with Zion Williamson. I think Zion Williamson is extremely safe if you want to go there in cash or just a safe floor in tournaments. Jason Tatum is definitely a way to differentiate, and I'm not surprised at all to see his ownership projected the way it is tonight because it's Utah, and Utah ranks in the top 2 against power forwards this year. But you got to remember, if there's no Jaylen Brown, Tatum's been playing small forward, and that could mean a
Right.
little Bojan. I'm assuming they would keep Royce O'Neal on him, but you never know how these cross matchups actually play out.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely a way to be different, and we know, as we just alluded to, I mean, if Jason Tatum goes for 40 actual tonight, would it, it's Jason Tatum. Like, he is one of the best up and coming. Well, I won't even say up and coming. He's arrived. He's one of the
arrived.
best
He's here.
players
Yeah.
in the NBA. especially when he gets going. So like you can definitely differentiate yourself with Jason Tatum tonight. It's scary, but again, just elite offense trumps elite defense a lot of the time. So I think to be different, you can go Jason Tatum. But generally, the more safe approach at power forward is going to be Randall or it's going to be Zion Williamson.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. I like Zion here, I think, a lot as well. Yeah, Randall, again, safe. Yeah, I wonder, do he and Bam sort of like cancel each other out a little bit?
We went for 56 in this
Yeah,
matchup the other day, and
that's true.
yeah, it's not like an easy matchup. But it's Randall has done so much all across the board. Like we got 13 rebounds, 7 assists, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. So like the points, yes, have been great, but we're getting a lot of peripheral stats, which has really helped out his floor. As we get Detroit Piston news flowing in, John.
Ooh, what do we have here, James? Detroit Piston news. We have Wayne Ellington expected to play. Delon Wright expected to play. Dennis Smith Jr. won't make his debut. So, someone that you and I were, or at least I was high on tonight was Josh Jackson. Ellington being active, does that impact him for you at all?
Like I think Jackson plays a role, but like we're paying a premium now, and with Ellington back, and Ellington has played a lot of minutes, so it's definitely worrisome to pay the price tag for Jackson. I think you could do it if you'd like. I think it's a fine tournament play, but what do his minutes look like with Ellington active?
Right.
I'm
We've seen it vary, and for me, I think the fact that Derrick Rose isn't available tonight
right.
helps that. I think that Jackson, should still see the floor. I think you had a value play in Svi tonight. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, Mihailik, Maluk,
Yep.
whatever it is.
Pretty close.
He's probably not going to be as much of an option now with Ellington back. If I had a guess, but I think Jackson's still okay there. Power forward value. You have Daniel Tice here. I know he's a center. Did I give him double eligibility yet on DraftKings, or is he still center only?
He's still center only. No, he is. I lied. He is double eligible on DraftKings.
All right, so he's a true power forward now on both sites. Where are you with him tonight? We've seen it's not the best matchup, obviously. Going up against Utah, Gobert. They kind of rotate him in at center at times, depending on the rotations. Is he somebody that you're really looking as a value, or is it one of those things like if you need to spend down tonight, Daniel Tice at power forward's a guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than like I am hammering this play, it's more like, okay, I'm looking at the landscape of the power forward value, and it's easier on DraftKings, obviously, because you could play Daniel House, who's 4,300 and power forward eligible. You could play Jay Sean Tate, who's power forward eligible. Toscano Anderson, power forward. Blake Griffin, who I actually like quite a bit in tournaments. But on FanDuel, you just like don't have that luxury at all. And if you have $4,800 on FanDuel, rather, where you have to play a second power forward, I don't hate it because he's been productive. When he plays 25 plus minutes, he's giving us 25 plus fantasy points.
Right.
We'll obviously waiting to see what the status of Jaylen Brown is, but if there's no Jaylen Brown, there's just more shots to go around. So I do think Daniel Tice is interesting, and I do think Tristan Thompson for that matter on FanDuel is interesting too. But just the problem with Tristan Thompson is how good was he? We were talking about this the other night. He was really good in that game against Phoenix. 6 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. And we were like, damn, Tristan Thompson could play 30 minutes tonight. He didn't check back in after he checked out in the third quarter. Did not check back in the rest of the game and just finished on 26 fantasy points. And that's the worry with Thompson that you don't really worry about with Tice if he's not in foul trouble.
Yep, I agree with you. Frank Jackson also ruled out for Detroit, so maybe Saban Lee is active tonight as like their backup guard. That's probably the case. Not really a huge deal there. Center tonight. Cover of the podcast was Joel Embiid. we're big Joel Embiid fans
Yeah.
tonight in this spot against Sacramento. If you're spending up, I know on the podcast Sean said he was taking Embiid over Harden. Do you feel the same way? I mean, this is a great spot. There's super foul happy Rashawn Holmes
Right.
starting. We've seen Embiid, really put himself in the conversation as the MVP candidate this year. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's firmly, and he might be at the top of that conversation, to be quite honest. Just the way that the MVP generally falls with like top teams in the NBA, outside of like there's a few outliers in that, Westbrook when he finished with a triple double, etc. But yeah, and it boils down to like Sacramento being really competitive in this game, being really good, and in a big total. Like if Sacramento keeps this game close, we should see Embiid stretched out to like 35 minutes. And we've seen 35-minute Joel Embiid score 37 actual points on multiple occasions. So I think he is just as good of a play as Harden tonight. And again, that's more speaking to the DraftKings audience because you can play them both on FanDuel. Like you can play them both on FanDuel. There's enough value. You play them both, you have 5,400. There's plenty. We've mentioned some really good value at shooting guard, some small forwards. So that's not really a worry. I don't have a problem if you want to fade Harden and play Embiid. You can still get your exposure to Kyrie in that game, or you can play Jeremy Grant at small forward on DraftKings if you want some exposure from that game. Maybe some Joe Harris if you're interested. Jeff Green, I know you were fond of through some conversations earlier in the day.
Against Detroit, yeah.
So I do think Embiid is as good of a play as Harden. And I know it's crazy to think because you're like, damn, like Harden can get triple-double. Well, Embiid can score 40.
You've seen Embiid go for 80 recently, right? So, or whatever it was. So
he can get you 40 and 20 rebounds because he's put both Hassan Whiteside and Rashawn Holmes like in 3 fouls in 8 minutes in the first quarter. So, yeah, I think Embiid is as good of a play as Harden, if not better. And I think he's going to be treated that way. But I will say the reason why I don't think we see as much ownership is because center is loaded.
Right. So we've been touting these smash spots for Cousins when he's starting. The price tags have been great for him. We've seen him go for 50 in back-to-back games, starting for Christian Wood a few weeks ago. So far in these 2 games where he started, though, not really been great. 35 fantasy points the first night, fine. Last night, as you mentioned, first night of a back-to-back, played 25 minutes, burned a lot of people, only 26 fantasy points there. Are you trusting him tonight in the second night of a back-to-back to play the 30 minutes we need out of him? Or do you kind of fade that chalk and look in a different direction?
So I think I'd feel better in tournaments, but we got to remember, we saw a similar scenario earlier in the year, and it was when Houston was really depleted. It was in the middle of January, and they played a back-to-back. Cousins demolished Dallas on the second leg of a back-to-back, 9 of 50, and that was the game after where he missed everything, and he gave us 36 fantasy points, going 2 of 16 from the floor, and then the next night he comes out 9 of 15. Like that's just like we're getting production that we saw when DeMarcus Cousins was at his peak. No, I'm not like comparing this version of DeMarcus Cousins to that, but like Houston is still going to feed him the ball. The offense is still going to flow through him like it has been recently. Yeah. So I don't think this is a situation where you're just like, nope, full fading DeMarcus Cousins because, I mean, it's not a great spot, but he is going to be in the post a lot. And there's like 20 rebound upside anytime you're going up against Steven Adams because they just don't leave the like restricted area, Right. So they're always involved on the glass. It's just not as auto play territory as it was Monday because as much as, we touted Andre Drummond, which ended up being very viable. We had mentioned Embiid. We have Nikola Vucevic, who's in a smash spot. We have Enes Kanter on the flip side, who has been super consistent. We have Rudy Gobert at just a silly price tag over on DraftKings.
Against one of the worst defensive teams against centers. So.
Right. It's just this position is extremely loaded tonight. So like, as good of a auto lock Cousins was, and Cousins was in like a ton of winning lineups last night because he was so highly owned, and he didn't kill you. I still think he's in play, but I don't think it's like as sure as it was on Monday.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Other guys, again, if you want to fade the two more popular options here, you mentioned Vucevic and Canton Gobert. What are your thoughts on maybe some of the value guys? We have Mason Plumlee, really great spot. You can continue to attack the Nets at the center spot. We've been playing some Kelly Olynyk of late. We really like that he has that GPP pop. He's shooting like 2 for 9 from 3, it seems like, every night. He's a better 3-point shooter than that. If he gets hot one of these days from 3, he's going to go ahead and pop. And this feels like a spot, we've seen centers, power forwards, whatever, have success against the Knicks this season. They're not really good at coming out the perimeter to defend him. And he also sneakily kind of contributes across the board. So, what are your thoughts on guys like Olynyk, Plumlee, and even if you want to go down a little bit more, I think DeAndre Jordan could be on the flip side in a really good spot tonight against a bad Detroit defense.
Yeah, so I think they're all viable. I think Plumlee's last game was somewhat of an outlier. 47 minutes, again, double overtime, but it is Brooklyn. We've been attacking Brooklyn ad nauseum for years, and it hasn't gotten any better with DeAndre Jordan now playing extended run, Right. And we've seen Plum Dog go for 34 more fantasy points in 4 of 6. So I do think he's in play. The only problem with Olynyk is like the minutes, and that's my only worry. Like they just don't extend him past 27 minutes. Like Spoelstra just wants to keep him at that number, whether he's shooting the ball, well or not. But as you mentioned, I mean, we could have been looking at 35 fantasy points at $5,000 last time out if he just makes a couple more threes, and that's fine at 27 minutes. Like you're gonna take that. And I do think that's a possibility against this Knicks front court because it's bad. And the matchup with Mitchell Robinson is ideal. And then I do like DeAndre Jordan. Probably more FanDuel. I probably like him a little bit more on FanDuel. I know he's more expensive, but we know that there is multiple block upside there.
Well, he's been getting some steals lately too,
and the steals as well. Right. So I do think there's more merit, I guess, on both sides because he's only 46 on DraftKings, and that's a really good price. And we do want exposure to this game, especially someone like Plumlee, who is always in foul trouble, and then they go to Isaiah Stewart, and he's always in foul trouble. And then, I mean, it's a good matchup for Jordan. I do like it. Does make me interested in Plumlee though a little bit more because he'll be able to stay out of foul trouble here because he's always in foul trouble.
Yeah, and that I agree with, and I also like it when, and I guess it depends on where he's on the floor and use it. Like when Jordan's off the floor because he only generally plays 22, 23 minutes, they're going small. So if Plumlee's up against a Jeff Green, I don't know if Noah Vonleh is going to be active tonight. They said he was like. He could make his debut for them, but like, how much is he going to play? Like, those are good spots for Plumlee to be on the floor, and he's another center that contributes across the board. He's a 4-category player, so like, sneaky upside there. And again, where no one's going to be playing him because they're all playing Cousins or Embiid tonight.
Right. Hey man, I do think that we've seen a blueprint when it comes to like slates, including Brooklyn, and playing multiple guys against Brooklyn has been very fruitful. So whether or not that's Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee or Jeremy Grant and someone else, I do think there's merit to it because you're going to be running it back with probably somebody, right? You're going to have a Harden or a Kyrie. Like it's ideal because they're such high usage players and the offense is so concentrated to them. You're going to want exposure. So I do think Plumlee's interesting. And I'll throw one more name into the ring, and it's a speculative play that I mentioned on the podcast last night. I think Embiid could get Richaun Holmes, and it's again not crazy to think, but Richaun Holmes could have 2 fouls in 2 minutes here.
Yeah,
and that will put Hassan Whiteside on the floor. And we know his upside. I mean, he just played 18 minutes and went 11-11 and 4 blocks. So
don't these two have a little bit of a history too, or was that Drummond that Whiteside has an issue with?
Let's see. I think it's Drummond.
I remember Whiteside in Miami having some beef with somebody, and I wasn't sure if it was Embiid or Drummond there.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't feel like his game. I'm just Hassan Whiteside and Andre Drummond. I don't feel like he's ahead of me. I don't know what that means. I guess in terms of All-Star voting.
I guess it's Drummond then. That's fine. But just wondering, because we know we like Embiid in these sort of revenge games, but if that's not the case.
Well, whether or not it's revenge or not, I love him. Love Embiid.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It is 6 o'clock. Slate locks at 7 tonight, right? So any final thoughts here before we let you go and get to everybody?
No, we'll be in subscriber chat for the next hour. Fast break article coming out shortly, and let's smash tonight.
I remember that. All right, guys. We'll catch you guys next time.